Hello, I'm John, and welcome to Edgetone Studios. In part 2 of my console restoration project, I got to the point where I found that there was indeed life in the beast. There was sound coming out of it. There was potential to get this thing working, but before I was going to do anything else in terms of testing, I was going to clean the crap out of it because it was filthy. So let's get to it. So I decided to turn my attention to cleaning these fader strips. So I took some buttons off, I got some knobs off, and I got another knob off, and another one, and another one. And then, what the hell? Damn. As you can see from my little Instagram clip, in the early days I didn't really know what I was doing with getting console strips apart, but I soon learned my lesson and started cleaning things efficiently. So I'd put the buttons in a container with soap and water and shake them around like crazy. And then I would dump that in a strainer, get the water all out of there, and then rinse them with some tap water, and then lay them out to dry. After patting them down in a towel, I tend to leave them overnight for drying. Sometimes I'd just leave them 3 or 4 hours if it was a nice warm day. Okay, something I've learned from the old Yahoo Groups forum, which is now on groups.io. The designer, Tom Graff, basically said that the first 20 units of the Sony MXP-3000 ever made, the motherboard sat a bit too low for the cards to fully sit in there. So if you take a look here, you see the card is not quite all the way into the slot. It's obviously enough to make contact. But what his suggestion is that underneath the motherboards, you put a washer under there and lift the motherboard up a bit. So I started trying on this one, and I've got it to the point where I can lift this end. I could probably slide some washers under, but the ribbon cables are holding everything down. So now I'm going to take the panel off the bottom here and see what I can get at in terms of just loosening it enough to get some washers under there. I don't want to have to take the whole thing off. So plenty of work. So I got to work removing the screws from the first panel on the bottom of the console, and shortly I had that removed and was able to continue on. One thing good about taking this panel off is I get to clean all this crud out from inside the console, so that'll help. I'll probably wipe down all the ribbons in there too. So I got myself down underneath the console with my phone, had another camera set up to video me doing this, which I later abandoned. It was just way too much work, and the regular camera isn't as good as my phone. So here's what it looks like under the motherboard. You see there's all these ribbon cables connected to each channel, as well as probably power and computer automation. Interestingly, a lot of these white cables are taped off. I wonder if they're always like that. Looks like all of them are like that. Maybe it's just an unused part. So I'm going to try disconnecting some of these. Let's see. You can see this says, can you see that label on there? I'm just trying to see if they're actually labeled as to which cable is which. LMB number 1, CNJ52. LMB number 1, CNJ53. 54, so, and that's 49, 50. Okay, so it starts at 49. And there's the back side of the unit there. Next, I disconnected all the ribbon cables from underneath the main board there. Okay, now that those cables are off, you can see there's some other ones here. It's MTR18, CNJ48, LMB number 1. Another LMB number 1, but that's 58. This one I can't see what the sticker is, so those 3 are on that first motherboard, and then all these cables, which also come out quite easily. Now lastly, there's power here, so we've got these rails coming in here, so just get a shot of that. Number 2, number 4. All right, my Quantum 4848 just arrived, so I will eventually be able to hook up this beast. Working on cabling and getting the motherboards out right now. My problem will be that I'm waiting on a Thunderbolt card for my MSI computer because they are on back order. So that might be another month. So a month, I can get this done in a month. So I did a test on the motherboard here. I put a couple washers under that screw and brought it up about 1/8 of an inch and not under the others. But if I go any higher, the screws don't fit. So I'd either need longer screws or just screw this whole idea. Haha. Next, I got started on removing the remainder of the panels underneath the console because I figured I might as well get all the junk and dust and peanuts and everything out of there and get these things cleaned up as best as I could. Plus, I figured I'm going to eventually have to access all the cabling under there to test things. So I worked on that until I hit a snag. Okay, I went to get the rest of the undercarriage panels off. And unfortunately, these ones at the back here, the screws are just rusted in place. So I'm trying some WD-40 and a hammer and a screwdriver into the slot, trying to loosen them a bit and seeing if I can get them out. The next panel seems to start coming, so I think it might just be this one. I'd like to get that all cleaned up. Seemed to work. I got that screw out of there. There's a lot of corrosion. I'm just going to clean that up as best as I can and try and prevent it from corroding again. See if I can get the other 3 off. Look at all these peanut shells that are falling out from up in there somewhere. There's a few left. That's another reason I like to get these panels off, get everything cleaned out. Okay, so I got 3 of the 4 screws out of there. And that last one is rusted and now it's stripped. And I guess I'm gonna have to cut it off and drill the shaft out of the hole. What a pain. Well, I was about to Dremel off the screw, and as I started, I realized I could make the slot a bit deeper, so that's what I did, and I managed to get that screw out of there. I just cut the slot really deep. Okay, 1 more panel to go. And there's the rest of the peanuts. Maybe that's got to be this console's nickname, Peanut. Okay, Peanut, let's keep going. So this is all the junk that was inside the console, minus the peanuts I already got rid of. So quite a bit of crap in there. Look at all that. Complete peanut shells. Like, what the hell? Oh well, they're gone now. Okay, now I've taken the bottom plates outside and rinsed them off and drying them in the sun, and then I'm going to WD-40 off the rusty parts. So there they are, getting all dried up. Here's a shot of all the buttons from a strip. Well, I've got my very first clean channel strip. All the grunge and grime is gone. So I've been working on cleaning channel strips. And on this one, I've got it totally clean, end to end. I've washed all the buttons, I've washed all the knobs, but because I didn't know what I was doing, like a fool, I used a simple tool like this to pry the knobs off. And of course, that's not how you do it. What you're supposed to do, see if I can do this with one hand, is get in here and pull the end cap off, and then there's a little compression nut in there you have to unscrew with a special screwdriver. Well, since I didn't do that, of course, I completely damaged some of these. I think it was this one here. One of these ones I pulled the compression nut so hard. Maybe I can get that one back on, but one of these ones literally pulled the shaft out. Okay, I can't find it, but trust me, I've wrecked one of them. But I'm gonna do those ones correctly. I've made myself a little tool to take those knobs off. So this is it here. It's just basically a flathead screwdriver that I used a Dremel on to make a notch in the middle of it. It works great. Okay, so I'm cleaning up these boards. They're pretty grungy. You probably see that. So the first thing I do is take off all these buttons. They just pop off. Okay, and then these two here are really hard to get at, so I use the pliers. Next is dusting. Yeah, crunch. And then the Deox Fader 5. Spray this under every pot. And then wipe down the excess. Put that there. And go get another one. So I really wanted to document the work involved in cleaning these channel strips, and I set up my Canon Rebel SL2 and once again ended up with a crappy overwashed image because I didn't take any time to set my settings. But you can get a general idea of how much is involved in removing all these caps so that you can get the knobs off. And I really wanted to show, this is just one channel strip out of 36 I'd be doing, plus all the master control modules. So heck of a lot of work, and I've got some better video later. Okay, the problem with this is some of these come out perfect, and then some of them just chip to pieces, which sucks because I don't want this board looking all beat up. I'm trying to clean it up. Okay, once all those knobs and all those buttons and all those caps have been removed and are soaking and cleaning, I take some 99% isopropyl alcohol and some cotton swabs, and one by one work my way from, in this case, bottom to top. I don't know why I always started at the bottom, but just kept the same pattern, working around every knob, getting all the dust and grime out, first with an initial wipe with some alcohol, and then more scrubbing as it moves along. And what I found was that you would look and see something that looked like a scrape in the metal and think it's not going to come off, but if you worked away at it for a while, it would come off, and it was actually just a dark bit of grime that was really stuck on there. So I won't bore you with the entire cleaning. I'll go back to fast forward, but you get the idea. I'm working through hundreds of Q-tips to clean these things off. There's just no quick way to do it, because you know the buttons and the knob caps or knob shafts are in the way of doing a complete wipe down. I will note that on the very first strip that I did, I decided to completely remove the metal from the circuit board, but in order to do that I had to drill out the rivets and remove the board and then find some little bolts to bolt the board back on. However, the one of the bolts gets in the way of one of the buttons on the
top of the bus selection process. I think it's actually button number 1. So that was not going to work. So I resorted to working through each board one at a time with Q-tips for hours over months of my life. So in between cleaning channel strips, I usually had another set of channel strips starting with a lot of buttons. So those buttons would need cleaning. And if you think about it, there are approximately 50 buttons per channel strip. And there are more than 36 channel strips because I have a spare, plus I have extra EQs in that. So some quick math will tell you that's over 1,800 buttons that needed cleaning, and I wasn't about to take a Q-tip to each one and wipe them down. So instead, I'd just shake them up in soap and water and let them sit for an hour or two, and then shake them up again and then dry them out. And every once in a while, my cat would show up. This is Callie. She's the studio cat. So back to my crappy Canon camera. Well, it's probably a decent camera. I just don't know how to use it. And there's all the button and knob replacing to do. So there's all this cleaning. That takes a bunch of time. But then there's all the time invested in replacing all the buttons and all the knobs. And the beauty is that when you want to put the caps back on, you have to turn the knob to one side or the other, or center if it's a center detented knob, and then carefully line up the cap so that the line is pointing at the right spot. And that's super quick, like it's fast as anything. No, it's so painfully slow. So more hours of my life wasted fixing up something that should have died in the 80s, but I'm gonna keep it alive. Okay, more fast forward video just to show that, yes, I did this 36 times plus more, so many times. My God. And this is just a work in progress shot I took one day of the many days that I spent cleaning consoles and drying buttons. Just relentless. It was, and I was. So I kept jumping all over from thing to thing on this console in between sessions, working on our album and house maintenance and everything else. And one of the things I got going on was just getting this thing cleaned up. So I took all the components off and wiped the meter bridge off with some Windex. And then I got started on cleaning the Scribble strip, which was just grim. So just to give you an idea, this is probably about 10 minutes of Windex washing that I condensed down into less than 40 seconds, which also included using isopropyl alcohol to clean the grimy bits that wouldn't come off with Windex. It was a lot of work. Okay, so today I've been doing some more cleaning of the console, and I've been cleaning the Scribble strip. And this is kind of the condition it was in before. I haven't done this end yet, but all that grime in the little slot there and just stuff stuck on it from old tape. And then this end, I've cleaned it up and it's looking a hell of a lot better. A little bit of dust still in there, but sweep that out. So it's going to be so much cleaner when I'm done. Okay, so now I'm going to use some Deoxit Gold G5 to clean all the contacts on the main boards. So let's see if I can hold the camera while I'm doing that. I've done a few already. Nope, apparently not. some dust in there. Gotta get that out. Right in here. Okay, so I'll just keep doing that. Okay, some further progress. I figured out that Tusha connectors 1 to 22, as it says here, are for optional tie lines. So that means that over here at the back of the board, we've got all these connectors starting from here. This whole line. These are all optional tie lines. There's nothing in the patch bay for those. So this one here I've disconnected is what all these extra lines here are for. So I can just pull that one out and get rid of all this extra connectivity here. So now I know what all those cables are for. There was some optional stuff from the previous owner, so I'm taking those out. So my Thunderbolt 4 card had arrived, so it was time to install the Quantum 4848. And that's when I found out that Thunderbolt 2 and Thunderbolt 4 didn't work well together. And after doing some testing and in some installs, my PC blew up. So I had a few days of recovery before I was up and running again. Now, one of the plans I'd always had for the console was to refinish the wood on the exterior. There was a big gouge in one of the side panels that needed sanding down, and I figured the whole thing could use a bit of refreshing. And I'm not bad with woodwork, so that was something at least I knew I could do. And I'd also hoped that I could find a deeper piece of oak of the same quality so that I could replace the top panel with something that my monitors could sit on fully. Otherwise, I was going to have to build some sort of stands to sit behind so that my Amphions could sit on their isolation pucks properly. So I got to work unscrewing all these bolts from behind the console, from in the sides, and getting all the panels of wood off. And once again, through the magic of editing and fast motion photography, I was able to get all these panels off in about 25 minutes, and you didn't have to watch the whole thing. Then I took the top board up to the studio just to see how it would fit, what the distance it was going to spread where my Amphions were sitting currently, and it looked like it was going to be perfect to have them right at the edge of the meter bridge once I had the back shelves made for it. And bit by bit I was getting more parts for the console. I'd managed to get some more EQs and some more preamps from a fellow here in BC. I'd got a couple more channel strips and some blank panels from a fellow in the Netherlands as well, and these were arriving. Meanwhile, all this time I'd continued to work on cleaning those channel strips, and I really want to give you a shot here of how filthy they sometimes were. This is just a typical example, not one of the worst ones. And here's a shot of what it looks like once it's all been cleaned up. And you can also see how much grime was coming off on these hundreds of Q-tips I was going through. So the console project is moving along. I've got a computer keypad now, and I've got new patch bay covers. I've cleaned the outside of that many of the strips. I've got this many queued up with the buttons off, the knobs lubed, and the knobs ready to be removed. I've got all those to go up there, and I've taken all this wood off ready for sanding, so it's going to be pretty amazing when it's done, but a lot of work. Okay, where am I at with the console project? I'll show you where I'm at with the console project. So I've got that wood all off, which I took off a while ago, that I'm going to sand and restain. I've got this many channel strips already cleaned, although the circuit boards haven't been cleaned. The outsides have been cleaned. I've got the patch bay covers back in and some of the metal back on. I've got 3 control modules and the broadcast module, which is just needed to fill the empty slot. And then 1 channel strip I'm just pulling the buttons off of, and 4 that are ready for knob removal. So yeah, I'm moving along. I still have all those
faders to lube and clean. Obviously, I haven't been doing this every single day, but getting there.
And then came the fateful day when I was finally cleaning the last of the modules, the spares I'd bought, the control modules, and as well as the preamps and EQs that I had as extra spares. So many buttons, so many knobs. And of course, the filthy, filthy Q-tips. They just continued. And I finally got an overhead shot of some detailed cleaning of the channel strips. This is one I'd been working on for a bit, so most of the grime is gone from this section, as you can see. But this is the type of work you need to do if you want it to be pristine, or at least as pristine as it can be. One of the issues with these strips is that the heat over the years has changed the coloration of the actual paint that's been sprayed on there. So the sort of purpley color is a little bit more brown, and the blue is not quite as blue as it was. And on the one channel strip where I'd actually removed the metal and washed it and scrubbed it, I managed to get the blue a lot cleaner, but it just wasn't worth the effort to try and get the color back. Ideally, I would have actually repowder coated and redone the whole thing in black. That would have looked amazing, but it wasn't going to happen. And when I got to the monitor module, I think I over scrubbed a bit trying to get the grime off these yellowed buttons, and it ended up taking out a little bit of the black ink in the engraving. I think I might be able to fix that up with some black ink, but I got it nice and clean anyways. Then after replacing the last few modules in the console so I could bask in the beauty of all of them being clean, I took them all back out again and laid them out in the driveway with some backing on them, and then remembered to take the preamps and the EQs out because I'd left them in. And once they were all set up, I took some WD-40 Specialist Contact Cleaner, which is a circuit board cleaner, and sprayed down each board on each side until all the dust and contamination was fully removed. Then after about 5 minutes of drying, I flipped over every single board and sprayed the other side fully. So these are the boards maybe 5 minutes after I sprayed them. Still slightly damp, but they're mostly dry. Probably take about 10 minutes for it to evaporate. So that was about a can and a little bit for 15 modules, so I believe I have enough. Yeah, so I bought 6 cans of the circuit board cleaner, and that lasted for the whole project. And I replaced all those modules and then worked on the next set and then worked on the next set. And of course that also meant replacing all the preamps and all the EQs as I went along, and replacing all the screws that held them together. But eventually I had the entire top part of the board done. And the next morning I got right to working on the fader strips. I did basically the same thing, laid them all out in the garage, took the circuit board cleaner, sprayed them down, sprayed the other side, and then bit by bit put them back into the console once they were dry. And once all of that was done, I was able to start on cleaning them. And this was basically the same process I'd done on the console strips, but this time I did them while they were in the board. I just didn't screw them down so I could move them if I needed to clean the edges a little bit better. And as soon as those were all cleaned up, I screwed them all into place, and then got to work putting the fader strips, caps back on, and was getting pretty excited because I was about to power this thing up for the first time with all the modules in place. And I forgot to change my camera settings. Well, I was about to do a video of the console turned on, but while I was changing my phone settings, it started smoking.
So there was a bit more smoke a while ago, but smoke is coming up from there. Everything's off now, unplugged. But she's assembled. She was working for 4 minutes before smoke started coming out. So now I look for what burnt. God damn it. Oh well. This might be more work than I thought.
So as you can see, that didn't end well. So what was going to happen? Did I just destroy my console? Had I burnt out a key component? Was it ever going to work again? Well, you'll have to wait till I get the next video ready for you to find out. Thanks for watching.